It feels good to be back in the Division, wandering the picturesque streets, rummaging through piles of crap, sifting through the rubbish to find an old sock or a crayon, whilst savouring the enchanting aroma of failure. It feels like being adrift in a sea of garbage. Welcome back to the Division, where dumpster diving is still probably the most fun you will have all day. Well, I figured it was time that I came back to check out the latest news in the Division. The world's most infamous, post-apocalyptic, dumpster diving themed, casino inspired, loot box gambling addiction facilitator. Although I would duly note, I'm pretty sure that if you go to a real casino, they don't force the customers to rummage through so many trash cans between spins on the roulette wheel. But who am I kidding? The Division 2 is a real casino. There's no hiding that fact anymore. The Division 2 online casino loot box storefront. Missions are optional. So back I came to bask in the kaleidoscopic radiance of the still unfixed rainbow loot, snigger at the new cookie cutter repetitive mission content, check to see if any more bitter and small-minded developers have nerfed my pistol. Again. And see which members of the Division staff have buggered off to work on the Smurf game, the mobile game, or that sci-fi game about the social justice warriors. You know, that one. I'm not gonna lie, it was slightly depressing logging in to see all the new content was just reiterations of the same content we've been playing since launch, with the odd, occasional deviation, like a new gonk for my rucksack, a voice message collectible with some cliched Russian dude grumbling, or maybe finding a particularly interesting or novel item of crap in an abandoned suitcase or trash can. What can I say? In the world of the Division, this is as close as it gets to living the dream. I was going to say something like, at least I got to hang out with one of the coolest and most beloved video game communities I have ever experienced. But unfortunately, when I logged in, it was immediately apparent that everyone I used to know has either fucked off or gone back to the Division 1. Perhaps they ran out of dumpsters to rummage through. At least I got up to speed with any new ad hoc last-minute story writing in the game, which was so tragically bad, it makes Season 9 of The Walking Dead seem like an existential exploration of the nature of existence. Not that I blame the writer's mind. I'm sure they're doing the best with what they've got. At this point, writing for the Division franchise must feel like being pushed into a gas chamber with a couple of cans of pink paint and some fairy lights, and being told to make the place look welcoming. There is only so much anyone can do. So what's new with the state of the game, and the sad state of the actual game? Well, it's abandoned. That's not a good start. The last state of the game was 5th of December 2020, so I think it's safe to assume that they have no fucks to give. Clearly they don't. It's coming up to 6 months of radio silence. So past experience would indicate that they have stopped milking this particular hamster and will shortly be promoting some new Division product to fleece the whales and fanatics. But more of this later. The TLDR is that the Division 2 feels a bit like going on a very expensive holiday cruise, where they throw in surcharges halfway through the journey, never reach the destination. The crew seem utterly incompetent and lost. They constantly tell you that the ship will finally arrive any day now. Then one morning you wake up leave your cabin and discover that overnight the entire crew jumped on the lifeboats and fucked off to another ship. And this ship, our ship, is out of fuel and drifting towards the rocks. What's even worse is that this is the second time we've had the exact same experience with this shipping line, and you know damn well that when they start advertising for the next grand sailing cruise, most of the dumbass passengers will still sign up for a third trip from hell. No doubt encouraged by whatever shills and hired liars have such incredibly low levels of integrity that they can still take the paycheck and be able to look themselves in the mirror. Maybe they will even make a statue in honour of these paid promotional partners. Again. Across the board, there has been a steady mass exodus away from the Division franchise. Julian Dick Joke Geraghty, creative DLC bullshitter and snake oil merchant from E3, you know the one, all year one content will be free. Well, he's fucked off to work on the Ubisoft Star Wars online casino. Hamish, we are working on it Bode, is currently working at Ubisoft Stockholm on an undisclosed project which he cannot discuss or reveal. So I fucking googled it, and he's working on the Avatar online casino. Frederick Modbreaker Thailander has got me blocked on Twitter, because that's what Thailander does. He bleats on about listening to the players, then blocks anyone that doesn't totally agree with him all the time, or makes some intelligent comment like, "Your gun mods are a bit shit, mate." And then, when he's finished blocking half the community, he goes back to making more shitty gun mods. Thailander, incidentally, invented the world's first video game pistol optic scope that reduced accuracy, and assault rifle magazines that enhance your DPS because they had extremely strong springs in them. Because, you know, everyone knows that the harder you push the bullets into this hole, the faster they come out of this hole. Anyway, he's not working on the Division, and I honestly am not that interested in the issue to spend 23 seconds on Google finding out where he is now. I think he's probably working on some gun control game for Ubisoft, where you try and stop people owning guns by making increasingly ridiculous gun mods. Johan, I totally don't look like a serial killer, but actually I do, has blown off Ubisoft altogether and moved to Munich to get a proper job. I will miss our little chats, to be honest. Admittedly, we only talked twice, or more precisely, he DM'd me, threatening to ban me from the official forums twice. But any human contact is good human contact, right? In fact, Yannick Slippery Fox Bonchereau is the only person I could find who is still working on the Division. This means one of two things. Either it's a fake job title and he really spends 99% of his time doing other projects, or he must have really pissed off someone at Ubisoft, and his punishment is being forced to work on this game. Given the recent revelations about Ubisoft managerial conduct and their staff, I reckon you could probably get in your co-workers' bad books at Ubisoft for simply refusing to play fanny grab with the interns, or not choking enough girls in bars. The workplace culture at Ubisoft has turned out to be so utterly chilling that being in the doghouse could possibly be interpreted as a good thing. My advice to any developer looking for a new job would be to mention in the interview that you didn't fit in at all at Ubisoft. That alone might actually get you hired. Curiously though, the official Division 2 account recently busted out this tweet, discussing the future of the Division and its cadence moving forward. The game's cadence moving forward? What manner of sophistry is this language? Cadence? This is a joke, yes? Well, apparently, cadence means this. So I reckon I can nail the cadence of the Division 2, and it's something like this. I'm sorry, but you can't leave a semi-broken unfinished game abandoned for nearly half a year and then post a tweet waxing lyrical about fucking cadence. What is the cadence of a dumpster fire? I also think that Ubisoft Massive needs to stop bragging about their little statistical gathering wankfest. 156 million headshots, 109 billion NPCs killed, 20 billion items looted. Why are they bragging about this? The game has such a paucity of content and the activities are so repetitive. Of course, players are going to do the very few things they can do many times, repeatedly, because there is nothing else to do. All you do is repetitively run around, shooting constantly respawning NPCs, killing them, and then looting the barrage of rainbow loot that they shit on you. There's fuck all else to do. Of course those particular statistics are going to be huge. Shoot guns, kill NPCs, loot rainbow loot, because Nicky Coupons might be good at PowerPoint but he can't sort out the loot for shit. Not only are these statistics a monument to how repetitive the Division 2 content is, to the point of absolute farce, even a numerically challenged dullard like myself can spot that these statistics don't stand up to even the slightest bit of scrutiny. They are big numbers that mean nothing. Or in fact, embarrassing statistics polished up with some spin to appear positive. Let's take these statistics to 21 Kiloton Science Lab. 937 million squad members revived. Well, there are 40 million players, which means on average 23 revives per player. That's an average of 1 revive a month per player since the game launched in 2019. So clearly, nearly all of the players have left the game, and the reviving is being done by the tiny minority of hardcore players still playing. 109 billion NPCs killed. Well, being generous here, and not counting the fact that NPCs constantly kill each other, let's assume incorrectly that all of these NPCs were killed by players. That's an average of 2,725 NPCs per player. Now, I barely touch this game. I only use a pistol, and my preferred military tactic is sharting it and running away. And even I have racked up 26,700 NPC kills. 10 times the average. I don't think you could run from one side of the map to the other without racking up 200 to 300 kills. So basically, run back and forth across the map 5 times and you will most likely already have killed more NPCs than the average player. When you scratch the surface of these big, fat, headline splashing numbers, get a pocket calculator out and engage a brain cell or 5, these statistics paint a very different and extremely negative picture. They used marketing, hype and promotional partners to shift a metric shit ton of product, and nearly everyone who bought the game sacked it long before endgame, possibly long before even max level. The other sinister implication is that they are clearly monitoring and analysing every single player metric and data harvesting absolutely every last moment, activity and action in game for the purposes of data mining player behaviour, so they can more effectively identify the whales and progress throttle players and push them towards buying the in-game pedo caches. The harsh reality is that they ain't producing any solid content for the Division 2 until the end of this year. Based on past experience, that means their strategy is this. They will be using this planned lull in new content and extreme levels of crushing player boredom to try and segue the Division community into another DLC-heavy Ubisoft title. This is not me being cynical. They actually admitted that this is a Ubisoft tactic. Allow players to get bored, then exploit that to bounce them to other Ubisoft games. Why pay for 3 finished games when you can split those costs 3 ways, never finish a game, and make the players pay full price for each one, and expose them to 3 different monetization strategies? It's genius. This timetable with the content also means that the Division 3 will probably drop just before the end of this financial year. If you remember our last spin around the sewer network, Ubisoft likes to go out with a high, so they will release a little good content so they can launch the sequel off the back of that. So yeah, I reckon the Division 3 is coming March 2022. Coming ready or not. And we all know it will not be ready, because it's the Division franchise, and these games ain't even ready by the end of their life cycle. I would also speculate that if Ubisoft Massive does not bother to produce any substantial content for the Division 2 this year, this will most likely be an indicator that the Division 3 is on indefinite hold. I would, however, note that it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to this franchise. Sometimes I know I can come across like I've got a bit of a downer on this game, just because they perpetually overpromise, underdeliver, treat us all like idiots and pump pedo caches in our faces. But I do also appreciate the positives. Like this. I found a really nice pocket calculator in here. That's got to count for something, right? I bet they won't find stuff as cool as this when they're going rummaging through crap in the Division movie. Talking of rummaging through crap, they just announced 2 new Division spin-off games. Heartlands, which will be a free-to-play money-leeching progress-gated abomination, and a mobile game, which is basically the same, only on a much smaller screen and a much bigger degree of monetization. I mean, goddamn, they've done it again. Remember how the Division 1 was running to the ground, and then they admitted that they'd been working on the sequel since day one, whilst not fixing the actual main game, demonstrating clearly that problems with the game were not an issue of manpower nor money, it was an issue of deploying all the developers and resources into making a sequel, because they could charge for that. Well, Ubisoft has announced that it has a, and I quote, broader plan to expand the Division universe's transmedia offerings. I think by transmedia they mean books, Funko Pops, merchandise, general resale crap, as well as the video game. I guess that means since I'm making a video about the Division 2, that means that I'm a transmedia content creator. I wonder whether I should put transmedia in my Twitter bio. I might get some free stuff. So yes, all this time the rainbow loot, boring repetitive content and general abandonment of the franchise has been going on. Secretly and behind the scenes they have been developing more shite to sell us. And no doubt the content creators of the world will suddenly have an attack of amnesia, forget how many times they've been lied to, and jump on the gravy train and start hyping this nonsense long before they have played the games, and scientifically established firsthand that they are fucking terrible. Well, on the positive side, at least Ubisoft has stopped pretending that the art strategy here is not all about sucking our money out of the bank. We all know what mobile games are about. They are quite literally a product finely tuned to trigger the part of the brain used for reward and gambling, so they can coerce you into spamming the buy stuff button. Consider the fact that they haven't got the inclination or good manners to do state of the game anymore. They apparently don't want to spend money or spare the staff to fix the issues with the Division 2. Yet all the while, in the background, they've been spending all the development budget on new Division games to reap in more cash. A key problem with the Division franchise is that every title seems to be a prototype for the next game. They never really finished the Division 1, nor fixed all the broken stuff, but they did use it as a testing ground for seeing how far they could push monetization strategies, loot boxes and cosmetics. Then they rolled out the Division 2, which is similarly incomplete and broken. They continue to use it as a testbed for increasingly pernicious and invasive monetization strategies, which now include rolling time-gated pedo cash events and in-your-face cash grabs. But don't worry, just like the Division 1, they are sure to get it right next time, apparently. And now we have a spin-off game coming and a mobile game. No doubt both will be rammed to the gills with monetization and not quite working properly, with a tired story and even more tired game mechanics, where everything is organised around monetization. There is a pattern emerging here. Every iteration is a testing ground for seeing how much they can fleece the player, and we have moved from a genre where the franchise was a game with monetization to a situation where it's monetization with a bit of a game thrown in to keep us occupied. I think the free-to-play ambitions of Ubisoft is a frightening prospect. Free-to-play used to be a great business model. Everyone plays for free, and 10% of the player base decide to spend some money and bankroll the operation. In the early, innocent days of World of Tanks, this was a wonderful strategy. Sadly, however, across the board, free-to-play became the crucible in which egregious monetization practices got smelted down and refined into a scientifically concentrated and purified set of systems. designed to get players to invest emotionally and psychologically in the game system, whilst constantly targeting them in the hope that harassment, frustration, content gating, and good old-fashioned gambling would part them from their money. In fact, many mobile game tactics can be traced directly back to free-to-play games. This is where all these technologies were developed, a genre that is now typified by time gating, progress gating, pay-to-win, intentionally frustrating the players, loot boxes and FOMO-based time-gated offers. And they grant themselves their own get-out-of-jail-free card, because if anybody fucking complains at how malicious the monetization is, the game developer will always turn around and go, "Hey, it's free to play. It's not like you paid anything for this game." Like it's some kind of oblique appeal to charity. I have fond memories of some free-to-play games, but they all go south eventually when the monetizers start to crank those pressure valves into the red. But on a more positive note, I found this crayon in a bag. Living the dream. Well, I played some Summit, so you didn't have to. I was initially intrigued by the 100 floors of content, until I realised that, really, it's just one floor. One floor multiplied 100 times, with different random or procedurally generated spawns. They moved the desks around a bit and they've got a few copy-paste room designs, but it's still basically pretty much one floor, repeatedly. I did like the catchphrase in the blurb, "Do you have what it takes?" I guess by that they mean a high tolerance for boredom, low standards, not much dignity left, and nothing better to do with my afternoon. So yeah, I had what it takes. The design philosophy behind Summit is somewhat confusing and conflicted. People were complaining about the repetitive, uninspired content and wanted something else to do. So Ubisoft Massive sat down on the floor, got the crayons out, put on their best dunce hats and came up with 100 floors of repetitive, uninspired content. That is a very peculiar solution to a very well-known problem. Well, I guess it is something else to do. Sure, it's basically small blocks of existing content reassembled into different shapes, but it is at least a different option to click on and a new location to experience refreshing and original new bugs and glitches. Summit is basically a poor man's knockoff Underground, only repackaged, made worse, diminished, and with the Ubisoft Massive branding slapped on it. Underground in the Division 1 was incidentally some of the best content made for the game by the Ubisoft Reflection Studio. It was basically procedurally generated missions, maps and content. You would stock up with ammo, select your difficulty settings and jump in, never knowing what would be at the other end of the tunnel. Universally liked, well received, quality, replayable content. Summit, however, is much more of a low-budget shitshow. It's boring, repetitive, buggy, copy-paste content. The philosophy being, how can we design 100 floors of content and only actually design one floor? I know, let's just only design one floor. Winning. I also have to take issue with Summit being described as free. As far as I'm aware, it's only free if you already bought Warlords of New York DLC, which itself was supposed to be free Year 1 content, and they charged £25 for it. Yes, check your calendars. My Little Wony came out a few weeks inside Year 1. It's not Year 2 content. The work on Summit was clearly done by enthusiastic workers who don't play the game. There was a combination of dodgy, no-cover terrain, visual items impeding tactical design, and the sheer high level of cheesing opportunities showed clearly that the people who made these levels had a basic grasp of how they wanted people to clear the rooms, but fundamentally didn't understand how people would clear the rooms. Plenty of times I just popped skills through the door, backed out, and hid behind a sofa and had a nap. Oh, and the easily missed loot rooms are a chronic shag. They're destructible light bulbs next to non-destructible light bulbs. You have ground clutter that extends over the edge of the floors, gaps in the fucking terrain, loot rooms with no boxes in them, boxes with no loot in them, cover objects that don't know they are cover, wind effects inside the fucking building, water reflection effects in lift shafts. You have locks on doors that need to be shot off, and when you do, it triggers the hostage event in the next area. What the actual fuck? And no views through the windows. So you might be in a bunker heading downwards for all you know. It's a shit show of rushed, unfinished, untested game development. It's like a really good student project. Well intentioned, but amateurish. And that's because that's precisely what it is. Made by students. Hearing footsteps and noises through walls and floors, however, is a nice touch that adds tension. I almost shit the bed when I heard people walking around above me, went upstairs to an area that should have been theoretically clear and face planted into an ambush. That was a nice flourish. So I guess I should address rumours about The Division 3. Previous rumours about The Division content in 2021 clearly now were referencing the pay-to-win casino and the mobile casino spin-offs. However, I did some serious professional investigative journalism. I scoured job application pages on the Ubisoft website, and I leveraged all my industry contacts and insider sources. Okay, perhaps I'm overstating the last part. My industry contacts are Ubisoft customer support, and they never got back to me. Well, they never get back to anyone, do they? And my insider source was that hot girl that works in the cafe just down the road from Ubisoft Malmo, who eavesdrops on their conversations while they're buying fucking vegan lattes. So after much investigation, here are my top facts about The Division 3. The Division 3 will be a bit shit. Even cursory statistical analysis reveals that the franchise is on a downward trajectory. The Division 1 was flawed, but at its core it had something special about it. Everyone loved New York, the weather, the dark zone, and the varied DLC game modes. The Division 2 was flawed, but at its core it had nothing special about it. Everyone thinks Washington is a sweaty shithole full of hipsters. It's hot. They nerfed the dark zone because they needed to enhance character customization for cosmetic items. The content is repetitive, and even Warlords was more of the same stuff. The same stuff that we had to pay £25 for. Therefore, if we analyse and project this trend on my video game shittometer, we see that the franchise is clearly getting worse each time, and will be decidedly shit by the third iteration. Science fact. The Division 3 will be made by children. The Division 1 had some of the world's best developers working on it. The beautiful snowdrifts, the fantastic art design, the oppressive atmosphere, the wonderful scenery, the genuinely exhilarating dark zone. As a PvE pissy pants crybaby, I would shit myself running into the dark zone to cap my weekly assignments. It was hilariously good fun. They had a bunch of developers at the peaks of their career, bringing their A game. Admittedly, it didn't work half the time, and some of the managerial direction was wizardry, but despite its faults, the game, as they say, had game. By the time the Division 2 was underway, a lot of the good old boys had already started to leave. And girls, I'm not sexist. And this mass migration away from the game continued until the point where they were bringing in the interns. Now we're at a point where literally all the old school devs have gone. Anyone with any talent has been hired elsewhere, and they are backfilling with newly promoted managers, and they are backfilling the developer positions with interns, students, and teenagers on work experience. Projecting this trend, the Division 3 will almost certainly be made primarily by children. I haven't been able to ascertain whether this will be in the form of Southeast Asian digital sweatshops, or whether they will just offer the work out as a Saturday job for kids, you know, like a paper round or a car washing gig. But considering Ubisoft's involvement with Tencent and their new access to Chinese markets, it's not impossible that the Division 3 might be made in ethnic Uyghur concentration camps in Xinjiang province. On the positive side, at least the Easter eggs and little hidden messages will probably be more interesting as they try to slip in cries for help to people outside of China. electric cattle prod pickups, and messages in the graffiti about being forcibly sterilised. The new base of operations will be situated in a casino. I've yet to confirm which city it's going to be located in, but I did hear a rumour that it might be set in Portland, and your job as a Division sleeper agent will be to restore order by helping the local hipster, barista, SJW and neo-Marxists whilst they try and establish a new society by burning the city down, looting and disintegrating any vestiges of law and order. The Division 3 has a desperate shortage of professional liars. Ubisoft have a big problem on their hands. All of the most experienced PR bullshitters have fucked off to work on bigger online gambling projects, I mean video games. Somehow they have to ensure that 3 corporate sock puppets will sit in front of the camera and lie to us effectively every week. I suppose they could get a literal sock puppet, put it in front of the webcam and have it say, "We're working on it, we're listening to the players, we're aware of that problem." Like a surreal and dysfunctional Punch and Judy show. They're also going to have similar problems with social media influencers and shill reviewers. They're going to struggle to find people who will betray their followers and tell the world that the Division 3 is an awesome game. What the fuck am I saying? They won't have any problems at all. There'll be a horde of content creators falling over each other to peddle bullshit about the game and tell us how it's literally the very pinnacle of live service video games. And this time, Ubisoft got it right. Look, it's a harsh reality to face, but we experienced peak Division with a Division 1, and it's all been downhill from there. The franchise has been in steady decline, and the monetization has been steadily ramping up and reaching ascendancy. Ubisoft makes most of its money recycling shit to people in Rainbow Six Siege, and that is precisely the same business model they're trying to roll out across the board. So what's my overall take on all of this? Well, just in case me and the rest of the Division YouTubers haven't banged on about this enough over the last forever many years, Rainbow Loot didn't get fixed, despite the best efforts of the loot breaker in chief Nicky Coupons. Despite making a fuck ton of graphs, diagrams, PowerPoint presentations, flowcharts, Venn diagrams and probability things, regrettably, the one tiny issue that Nicky forgot to put on his important things to do today list was to actually fix the fucking game. It's still fucking balked, mate. I don't know whether the loot breaker in chief is really just a frustrated artist who really just wants to be a graphic designer and draw pretty pictures all day, or whether he's just really incredibly bad at prioritising the items on his to-do list. But given all this time, work, pretty infographics, I know that speaking for myself, it's a bit disappointing that he only ever got around to drawing the solution, and not doing the solution. I mean, I've drawn plans for a time-travelling spaceship with a giant planet-destroying death ray mounted on top, and despite the absolute genius of my schematics, I would reluctantly admit that my endeavour lacks a certain degree of credibility until I actually manage to make it. The targeted loot function for Summit at least goes some way towards mitigating the fuckery of shit random rainbow loot. This said, after several days play, I earned lots of crud and only ended up with one equipable item that I was targeting. And actually, when I think about it, targeted loot doesn't actually change the chance of getting shit loot. It just means you can focus on just getting one type of shit rainbow loot, one at a time. It just takes the psychological sting out of the pain. We're in the third and last year of the Division 2 with 2 spin-off games launching imminently and the Division 3 just around the corner. I'm pretty sure if they were going to fix this shit, it would have been fixed by now. But at least he made all those graphs, so at least he's got a lifetime supply of emergency toilet paper. The Division 2 suffers from a critical failure to emotionally engage the audience. Primarily, the Division 2 is basically the Division 1, only where you don't care. In the Division 1, despite all its faults, you gave a shit about what was going on. In the Division 2, the only investment people get is in the loot or completing sets of cosmetic outfits. One is about narrative and the other is about reward loops. I mean, you can get someone to sit through a shit 3-hour movie if you keep giving them free popcorn and they have a game of blackjack going on the side. They barely need to even look at the screen. The Division 1, despite its flaws, had heart. You gave a shit about the city and what was going on. The oppressive weather combined with the real environmental threat of cold in survival mode sucked you into this dangerous world that seemed to want to kill you. In the Division 1, the city was practically a character in the story. It was a cold, harsh proving ground where you had to survive, and it was punctuated with safe houses that served as a little oasis of safety in the brutal city. The frosty city of New York was the place you were trying to save, which was also hell-bent on killing you. Now compare that to the city in the Division 2. It's basically a map. It's hot, and there's lots of things to trip over or get stuck on. It's not a character in the story. Fuck, it's got less character than a circuit diagram. Start here, go there, it's sweaty and repetitive. If the city was a character in the Division 2, it would be a hipster's sweaty armpit. And in fact, the most emotionally engaged I got in the Division 2 is when I see some sweaty baristas walking around in the blistering sun talking shit as usual. And momentarily, I honestly sometimes imagine I can fucking smell them. It's a bit of a step down from the original game. On a more positive note, I did enjoy the high quality visuals of Coney Island. As always, Ubisoft was doing what it does best, making things that are incredibly pretty to look at, but vacuous, unengaging and vaguely boring. It's such a pity that Ubisoft Massive hasn't set up its own Twitch Thought channel, because I reckon that would really play to their creative strengths. Sure, the channel would be as boring as all fuck, but it would most certainly be oh so very attractive to look at. Blowing up the Coney Island roller coaster was a gratuitous act of sacrilege. However, I'm going to let them off on this occasion because 1, I like explosions, and 2, actually I just really like explosions and blowing shit up. I love that shit. Ubisoft could blow me up, as long as they make it look like a stunning spectacle with huge pyrotechnics and fireballs. They've probably even already considered it. Wandering through very pretty and beautifully rendered Coney Island, it was pretty obvious what Ubisoft's problem is. They are all show and no substance. The level design was the same old shite. The missions were the same old shite. The story was crushingly uninspiring. We have all seen and done this so many times before. Follow the path, take out the group of mobs, wait for reinforcements, kill them too. Perhaps if they're feeling particularly generous, some NPCs will drop down from a helicopter or burst out from a cupboard. Reload, move up, rinse and repeat. It's the Division. Go in there, kill the random dudes, loot some crap, go back to the base of operations to spit on the puppy and deconstruct your crap. I don't blame the devs, the writers, the artists or the art designers. They are doing the best they can with what they've got. And what they've got is a very stale, uninspired arch narrative about the hipster holocaust and how a bunch of baristas are going to save the earth and rebuild society. Playing the game again after having spent time in a slew of indie games and classic titles, I had a spiritual realization about the Division franchise. I'm struggling to have any fucks to give about it. I started vendoring most of my drops because min-maxing is a hassle. And let's face it, the only point of doing it is so that you can take on harder content to get better drops so you can min-max again with higher level gear. It's a perfectly virtuous cycle. It's the Division. What do I need decent gear for? I can rummage through fucking dumpsters with the shitty gear I'm wearing now. I don't need better gear to go and stand on the riverbank, be depressed about the state of the game and stare out across the water with the bleak look of existential despair in my eyes. I can do that in my fucking pants. Not that Ubisoft lets you take your clothes off in this game. You are forced to remain dressed because, you know, microtransactional cosmetic items. And right there is a critical point of note regarding this franchise. If Ubisoft Massive actually released a DLC where you could undress your character and just walk around depressed, just wearing your skiddies, it would probably be the most popular content drop since launch. That's my player power fantasy right there. The last thing I want to do is shit all over The Division 2 and portray the game as a soulless loot box cash grab. I genuinely mean that. No, I literally mean that. Absolutely literally. It's the last thing I want to do. See, it's right here on my list under point out that Johan looks like a serial killer, explain why The Division 3 will be utterly dreadful, and last thing, shit all over The Division 2 and portray the game as a soulless loot box cash grab. There it is. As I've said in many ways on many different occasions in the past, Ubisoft have the talent. They have the developers with the skills and creativity to make beautiful worlds. They just don't seem to have the determination to deliver a finished game, any ambition beyond monetization and sales and marketing, or creative vision. In fact, I will correct that. I'm sure they have hundreds of creative people working for them. But why is nobody being let off the leash? The last time I saw anyone waxing lyrical about creativity in The Division, it was some tit banging on about all the rubber ducks in the game. I mean, seriously, that's all you got? That's the only scope for creativity? An apocalyptical combat game set in a post-collapse America, and the only time your creative developers are let off the leash, they came up with rubber ducks. What the actual fuck? This isn't The Sims. In many ways, the direction of the Division franchise has deteriorated to the point where it is summed up precisely and eloquently by the lyrics of the venerable musician, polymath and disinformationist Reggie Watts in his now legendary song, Fuck Shit Stack. You take some fuck, then some shit, then some fuck, then some shit. You've got a fuck shit stack. A fuck shit stack. And The Division 2 is indeed well typified by the metaphor of the fuck shit stack. Instead of adding new content, coming up with fresh ideas and investing some time, resources and creativity into the franchise, Ubisoft Malmo just kept regurgitating the same old content, stacking it on top of itself, as if in some way having lots of different ways to do the same exact thing would metamorphosize into something equivalent to being original and new. Well, it's not. You go through a door, trigger a checkpoint, NPCs attack you, you kill them, you loot some rainbow loot, and shuffle off to your next rendezvous with extreme monotony. It's the same shit done thousands of very slightly different ways. The summit is literally a monument to this design fallacy. It's a literal fuck shit stack. It's 100 floors of monotony stacked on top of itself. And they expect the player base to accept this masterclass in copy-pasted content as somehow being new and fun. Well, it's boring. And it's a bit shit. Just like everything else in the game, with the exception of the in-game store, of course. Now that shit right there, they put a lot of work into that. But on a positive note, I did find this in a set of drawers earlier. Living the dream. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.